Who doesn't love a good cliffhanger? Avengers Infinity War's dusty mess of an ending, Modern Warfare 2's Stabathon final showdown, homeless Luke Skywalker in the closing scene of The Force Awakens. The list is near endless. But there is a downside to some great cliffhangers. Over time, these to-be-continued style endings can turn sour when it becomes clear that they will never ever be resolved, leaving you feeling like you've just wasted your time. So just to annoy you all over again, let's take a look at some of these unlikely to be resolved gaming cliffhangers and cry salty tears all over our keyboards at the thought of where the follow-up games could have taken us should they have been made. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game cliffhangers that will never be resolved. Number 10, Bulletstorm. Bulletstorm is one of those mid-tier FPS games that were oh so prevalent during the PS3 era, and it's one of the most underrated of the lot. In the final level, you confront bad guy General Serrano on board his rescue ship, slaughtering your way through waves and waves of goons to get there. A short gunfight later, and you whip Serrano into the air and kick him into a piece of metal sticking out of the wall, which seems like it should kill the guy, but nope, you are not so lucky here. Serrano ejects you from his ship, having you face off against more enemies before the credits finally roll. Wait around after said credits and you'll be greeted by some extra dialogue that sheds a little more light on Serrano's fate, while leaving a lot of questions unanswered. This extra scene reveals that Serrano survived and is now a cyborg, and that Ishii, your former teammate, has also survived, implying that the two will be working together in a sequel that will probably never happen. Number 9, Advent Rising. The closing moments of 2005's third-person action at Advent Rising are the very definition of sequel bait, which, considering the game was intended to be the first part of a trilogy, was actually quite inevitable. The story follows protagonist Gideon Wyeth, a badass one-man army type of guy, as he blasts his way through hordes of a sinister alien race called the Seekers. Near the end of the game, it's revealed that the Seekers were only getting up to no good on the orders of someone else, a godlike being called the Corone. Naturally, Gideon murders this thing as well, and for a moment it looks like everything has been tied up in a neat little bow. But wait, there's more. Out of nowhere, a portal opens and sucks Gideon inside, transporting him to a derelict ice planet where it looks like he's been stranded and left to die. Gideon collapses but is soon approached by yet another random alien dude who tells Gideon there is much to be done before the game just ends. Publisher Majesco had big plans for the Advent Rising IP, including 2 more mainline games, a PSP spin-off, and even some novels. Sadly, the first game underperformed sales-wise, ending this potential franchise before it could really get going. Number 8, The Darkness 2. The Darkness revolves around the relationship between Jackie, the hero of both games, and Jenny, his girlfriend. During the first game, Jenny is brutally murdered while Jackie watches, helpless to intervene. In the sequel, Jackie is haunted by visions of his GF, which prompts him to kill himself in an attempt to rescue her from hell. This leads to one of 2 endings. In the first, Jackie and Jenny are reunited in a hallucination, and the game ends with them slow dancing as the screen fades to black. Oh, the second, however, is a bit more grim. Here, Jackie will fall into the underworld where he manages to rescue Jenny for real. Everything looks great and it seems like it's all over, right up until the moment it's revealed that Jenny has become the host for the Angelus, enemy of the titular Darkness. Since Jackie is strongly affiliated with the Darkness, this plot development was not ideal for him, so maybe it's for the best it was never resolved. Number 7, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. Sly Cooper is no Ratchet & Clank or Jak and Daxter, but his original trilogy of games on the PS2 were popular enough that a 4th entry made its way to the PS3 and PS Vita in early 2013. Thieves in Time follows Sly as he travels, well, through time, attempting to repair his family history that is being tampered with by the villainous Cyril Le Paradox. At the end of the game, Sly confronts his opponent atop an enormous blimp where the two engage in a sword fight and Le Paradox falls into the ocean below. Bad guy defeated, job's a good'un, right? Well, obviously because it's on this list, no. Unfortunately for Sly, the blimp is on fire, so he can't just land it and clamber off. The game actually ends without revealing whether or not Sly survived, which would be a sequel-baiting ending unto itself, but dev Sanzaru Games just couldn't resist a final tease that directly hinted at the titular raccoon's next adventure. If you collect all the game's trophies, you unlock a secret ending cutscene that lasts for roughly half a minute. Here Sly wakes up in the desert, the golden sun beating down upon his face. The camera then reveals that he's ended up in ancient Egypt, and with no way home, he's essentially stuck there. Number 6. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2. Both games in the Dark Alliance series end on a cliffhanger, and while the ending of the first game was addressed, the sequel wasn't so lucky. Set within the city of Baldur's Gate, the game has its 5 playable characters facing off against the evil vampire Mordok Selanmir, who ends up causing chaos within the city when he turns its entire population into zombies. This leads to a final confrontation with Mordok that sees the heroes kill him, restoring the citizens back to normal and, of course, saving the day. But as the great band The Klaxons once proclaimed, it's not over yet. The game then cuts to a room with a man talking to a sarcophagus, no kidding, with the two talking about how Mordok has failed, and that Baldur's Gate still stands. The sarcophagus then asserts that they'll get the job done themselves, raising an army and preparing a barge to, presumably, storm the city and mess it up. Sadly, Black Isle and Interplay went under after the game's release, and a sequel never materialized. Number 5. Half-Life 2 Episode 2. The non-existent sequel to Half-Life 2 Episode 2 has become a popular meme topic over the last 10 years, almost like fans of the series are trying to turn their frustration into something more positive. And they have every right to be frustrated as well, because not only does Episode 2 end on a cliffhanger, but Episode 3 was explicitly promised to them on multiple occasions. The haunting ending of the game shows the death of old Eli Vance, who is killed by a Combine advisor that shoves its tongue into the back of his head. A nasty way to go if you ask me. His daughter Alex then cradles his lifeless body and begins to weep, before the screen fades to black and the credits roll. So what happened to Alex and Gordon Freeman from here? Valve probably knows, but the rest of us just don't. Episode 3 was supposed to launch by Christmas of 2007, and even the developer commentary for Episode 2 stated that a sequel was coming. But, of course, it never actually did, and the most frustrating thing is that it's never been officially cancelled. Come on Valve, just give Rich some peace. I see him suffering every day and I just can't take it anymore. Number 4. Star Wars Republic Commando. With EA currently squandering the potential of its Star Wars license, fingers crossed though for Fallen Order, the days when we used to get solid, frequent Star Wars games feel like they happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Which is a shame because that era gave us amazing titles like Republic Commando. The final scene of that game though is set inside an evacuation ship, where a trio of troopers are told that their mission is not yet over, and they must lock and load to prepare for the battle ahead. Since you're told that Delta Squad was only the advance force for a full-scale invasion, the insinuation is that there's a lot more action for you to take part in. However, the game basically ends halfway through the Kashyyyk conflict, which is frustrating as all hell. A Republic Commando sequel was on the table at one point, but it was scrapped, and considering that there are far more popular Star Wars video game franchises out there, the chances of EA resurrecting this one are slim to none. Number 3. Too Human. The promise of its unresolved cliffhanger isn't the only time Too Human has failed to deliver the goods. Released in 2008 exclusively on the Xbox 360, the game was originally meant to launch on the PS1 all the way back in 1999. Its story revolves around Norse mythology, where you play as Baldur who, as the game progresses, discovers that he had previously been brought back to life by the other gods. In the final scene, he confronts the Norse council about this, has a hissy fit, and storms out the room. Elsewhere, the mischievous Loki is shown wandering through a wintry plain, set to a voiceover that basically says, "Let's stop this dude before he does more awful stuff." Loki then glances up at a massive titan towering above the land, with the insinuation being that he'll use it to devastate Asgard. Too Human was initially planned as a trilogy of games, but a messy lawsuit in which developers Silicon Knights was sued into bankruptcy by Epic Games for using a stolen game engine killed the series' future permanently. Number 2. Game of Thrones, a Telltale series. While the story itself is twisty-turny and enjoyable in that good old Game of Thrones sort of way, actually playing through Telltale's adaptation of the famous TV show is a miserable experience. Absolutely nothing goes your way, and we're not just talking about the bugs here. And by the end of the game, pretty much everyone you care about is dead or in a horrible position. Young Ethan is killed at the end of episode 1, Iron Wrath is invaded by the vile White Hills, and it's revealed that one of your closest advisors has been been a traitor all along. Not cool. By the end of the game, things get even worse though. Either Asher or Roderick, the game's two primary heroes, will be killed. Along with Lady Forrester, Ironwrath becomes a crumbling war zone, and the few characters left standing are forced to flee the scene. Whoever doesn't die out of Asher and Roderick is left wounded, but alive, riding off into the distance and reuniting with the few allies he has left. But maybe things will look brighter in a sequel? Actually, no, scratch that. While a follow-up was in development at one point, it's now dead as a result of the closure of Telltale Games roughly a year ago. And while Telltale was recently resurrected, the Game of Thrones license is no longer in play. And that is a genuine shame, because along with Tales from the Borderlands, Game of Thrones is most in need of a sequel out of all the company's past releases. Number 1. Resistance, Retribution. Sony Bend has a habit of making great handheld versions of Sony's biggest console franchises, but years before they did it with Uncharted on the Vita, they did it with Resistance on the PSP. Taking place between the first two mainline PS3 games, the spin-off focused on Royal Marine James Grayson. After being forced to kill his own infected brother, Grayson is driven to breaking point and starts destroying Chimera conversion centers for sport. He gets so good at doing this, in fact, that the game concludes with him and his allies wrecking the main Chimera tower in Paris, freeing Western Europe from the aliens. However, one of the last scenes in the game shows Grayson standing in front of St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, his back to the camera. When he eventually turns around, his eyes are glowing a bright yellow, a symptom of being infected with the Chimera virus. How did Grayson get infected? What will he do next? Will he turn into a full Chimera or remain a human Chimera hybrid? All juicy questions that will never, ever be answered.